Hello, everyone. Welcome to Boilermaker Lounge. This is the limited edition Beyond the Rails portion that we do, talking to former Boilermakers about their time before, during, and then also after their time in West Lafayette. I'm Sam Springer, as always, joined by Grant Flora. Grant, today we've got part two with the captain of the baby Boilermakers, Chris Kramer.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really good. Part one was great. Part two is going to be just as good too, just about his time more like overseas and after Purdue and what he's doing recently, because he just in the past couple of years stopped playing overseas. So another really good chance to just learn more about a Purdue guy and hear more from him.
Absolutely. And we've got, like we said, a great conversation with Chris. We also have some others that we've got lined up that will come out later in the summer. Some great players from my time and then a little bit before and hopefully a little bit closer to maybe Chris Kramer's time. So enjoy this part two of Beyond the Rails with Chris Kramer here on the Boilermaker Lounge and enjoy.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess another thought I had, what about like Ohio State? Because they were really good in those times too. Was it always tough to go into Columbus and get a win, or where did they stand in that kind of hierarchy, if you will?
I think playing against Ohio State was tough just because they were good. It didn't have anything to do with any of the other circumstances around it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know, their arena is built like an NBA arena. So the fans, even though when they were really good, they still, you wouldn't know that there was however many people there. It's not like they were, in sync with cheers and, everybody's on the same page. It was just kind of people there watching Greg Oden and Mike Conley and,
pretty good players.
They had some really good players. So, but I don't think they were one that it was tough to play there for any of the, kind of outside circumstances. But they did have really good players. And, you talk about game planning against Evan Turner when they kind of moved him into point guard. He's a second overall pick. They had John Deaver, they had William Buford, they had David Lighty. I mean, you talk about guys that played years overseas that made a bunch of money. Surrounded by, some other bigs that they had that, some made the NBA, some didn't. So they definitely had great teams. But, it was just that came down to like a schematical situation of, how do you guard them? Who do you put on John Diebler and things like that?
Yeah, it's just interesting for me because, like, I was young enough, I wasn't, like, really super aware of what was going on in these games when I was watching, like, you play.
Chris.
So, yeah. So I was just like, I don't know if those arenas were any different back then or not. So,
yeah, Ohio State. I don't even know how it is now, but I don't think, from a basketball perspective,
it's pretty wide open.
No,
the Schottenstein Center is kind of wide open. I mean, it's not that it's a huge place, but the people spread out. Like the people aren't on top of you. Like
you're
even
pushed back. You don't really have
even at Mackey, even though it's an 18,000 or 16,000 seat play, they're on top. Like the crowd's close, and it's a little bit different at the Schottenstein. And if they play at the bigger arena then as well, obviously that's a real big arena comparatively. Well, let's talk about your senior day. You played IU on your senior day. How doesn't matter that they're no good. How wonderfully sweet was beating IU on your senior day?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, obviously, I mean, first of all, you just want to win on your senior day.
Sure.
I think one of my years we lost in Northwestern, and our seniors were like pissed.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
rightfully so. But no, that was like, that's how you want to go out. You want to obviously want to win, but if you can beat your rival. And then for me, I played really well that day too. So it's kind of like, the cherry on top.
7 of 8 from the floor and 18 points against you can't argue with that. That's a great way to go out on senior day.
Yeah, I mean, if I only could have done that every game, it'd been awesome.
So okay, you guys you lose Robbie for the tournament going forward. You get knocked out in the Sweet 16, but you've seen, like, before you got to West Lafayette. Coach Katie is a great coach. He was a great coach. He was getting older. Coach Painter coming in, so there was a 4 or 5 year time frame where Purdue wasn't very good.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to come in, and I believe you made the tournament all 4 of your years, correct?
Yeah.
How does that make you feel with I'm trying to ask you what your legacy is without saying what's your legacy, but how does that make you feel knowing that you kind of were the start? You were the start of what we're seeing in Purdue's teams now. You know, you were that recruiting class and the first few that started this tradition now.
Yeah, I think we got the ball rolling. We got it rolling in the right direction. We kind of corrected some things that weren't successful, in the years previous. I think as Coach Katie got older, I think some of the recruiting and some of those, things kind of fell off a little bit.
Yep.
But then, I guess it was just me and Keaton Grant at the end. All the other guys that we came in with didn't finish. Yeah, we kind of got the ball rolling. And, I think every year there was in the middle of there, I think Ray talks about it, there was like a down year or two when it came just to maybe like personnel and like overall fit for Purdue, where they were like last in the Big Ten and things like that. And then they kind of got back out of that when you get the right pieces. We kind of got the ball rolling in the right direction. And then I think the greatest thing of this whole from my freshman year till now has been the evolution of Coach Painter and his staff, delegating the trust that he has in them, the offensive savant that Coach Painter is now. They have like a football, size playbook, it seems.
Awesome.
And from where it was when I played, we ran a lot of motion. We had some sets and things like that, but it was a lot of that read and react, and the way they play now is so much more offensive, kind of set driven. Obviously with Braden, it's a lot of pick and roll, so they have a lot more freedom. But I think his evolution, him really knowing who he is as a coach, and kind of being comfortable with, his job and everything that comes with it, knowing that he can be comfortable in his own skin, being himself and not having to be somebody different, has really helped, take us to another level, because being genuine is something that can come through with recruits. He's not lying to people. He's telling you straight up how it's going to be. And, whether that's if you're Jaden Ivey, if you're Braden Smith, if you're Zach Edey, it's all going to be the same. He's not promising you anything, but he's going to tell you about the opportunity you have, and then it's what you do with it from there.
Well, and Grant and I have even kind of talked about this, people seeing what Coach Painter is doing now. People are going to want to know, especially if they end up winning the national championship this next season. How can we replicate? And we've talked about it. Go back 20 years, because that's when he started. Because it almost seems like in the stories you're telling, it's exactly how he recruited you. Look, these are your opportunities. I'm not going to promise you the world. I'm not going to promise you anything, but you have these opportunities. And I think he hasn't changed in that aspect, at least in his recruiting style, even from day one.
No, I agree with that. I think the game has changed now too. With recruiting, when you're not going after some of the big name one-gun type of players who are asking for crazy amounts of money in NIL, you're going after some other people who you think are going to fit your system. There's going to be some type of loyalty there when you're giving somebody an opportunity to play in the Big Ten that maybe didn't have an opportunity to play in the Big Ten before. So there's a little bit of loyalty there too, I think. But the game is ever changing now. So I think, some of these new rules with, profit sharing and everything, hopefully it kind of calms it down a little bit. But, it's still the wild, wild west. But the good thing, you saw it this year, Purdue has some money if they need it.
Yeah, if they need it, yeah. and I think that's huge too. And we'll get to life after West Lafayette after this little thing here is, he Coach Painter, like you said, he builds loyalty because Braden Smith could have left for a truckload more, and he still said, "No, I'm coming back," because he was the only one that really gave Braden a chance while he was being recruited. And I think that that and the trust in him as a freshman and so on, much like yourself, as a freshman, you were trusted in a certain position. And from then on, you knew that Coach Painter trusted in you and you did the same back at him. And I think that's the same thing that he's got now.
No, I agree. I agree completely.
Grant, you got something?
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess just transitioning into our after West Lafayette life. You talk about kind of the relationships you built with the coaches and with the players and like, Keaton Grant, Robbie, Juwan, Etwan, those guys. How connected are you with those guys now? Do you still maintain some of those relationships with your old teammates? I'm assuming at least some of them you still do, but where are things at now, like with those guys? And did you keep kind of connecting after your days at Purdue? And what was that like?
It's been ever changing. After I graduated and some of those years after, you're kind of in more of a contact with some of those guys because it's way more fresh. And, I was playing against Keaton overseas and things like that. So you're seeing guys, you're still talking to the guys that are, on the team currently, that you played with and things like that. But as you kind of remove yourself, years later, when guys kind of go their separate ways and everybody has their own thing, it gets a little bit harder. So, I do still stay in touch with a few of the guys. Say the guys I'm closest with now would be, I talked to Robbie, I talked to Bobby Riddell, I talked to Drew Anthrop. I'll see Ryan Smith now, since he's working for Purdue or the John Purdue Club when I go down to games and stuff like that. But, it's gotten a lot harder. I probably need to be better on my end about like reaching out and things like that. But, at this point, everybody's busy and, we all have excuses. But, I definitely need to be better about reaching out to some of those guys and just, checking in and, all of those things. So
that's the way life is. I know, you have the best of intentions, but life does get in the way. You start having your own family. They start having their family things, So I totally get what you're saying that, there's the intent, but it doesn't always come through
right
that way. So, okay, let's jump in a little bit about your pro career, and then we'll get out of after you've done where you've been since you retired. You were all over the place. You started in a couple of camps in summer league camp, went to the D League for a season. Then you went to Puerto Rico. What made you finally decide, okay, maybe the NBA part isn't happening right now. Maybe I can go play overseas or in other countries and maybe get back to there, but at least make some money and play the game of basketball.
Yeah. So, after graduating, I went to camp with the Milwaukee Bucks. Scott Skiles is the coach. He brought me in before he cut me. He's like, "Hey man, I want to keep you, but we have this many guaranteed contracts. We can't do it." It's like, okay. So then I went to the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. Was playing pretty well. In the D League at the time, they had like the advertisements on the floor, like the stickers.
Yep.
and they had it kind of free throw line extended, by the sideline. And I was playing defense, and I stepped on it, and my guy went the other way, and I just stepped and, ended up had a second degree tear in my MCL or something like that. So I was out for a while. Ended up coming back and playing really well. The Bulls were at one of my games, and there was talks of a call up and things like that. It just never happened. So then after the season, I went to Puerto Rico. One of the guys that was in one of my classes at Purdue, his dad was the owner of the team I went to. So I went there for 5 weeks, played in the playoffs, and then came back after. And then I went to a couple mini camps. The one that really stands out was the Chicago Bulls, and I played some of the best basketball that I played. And I was, looking at an opportunity of, going to training camp, and then kind of seeing what happens from there. If that's, staying in, do I stay in the, D League again? Do I make the team? Do I not? Do I go overseas? But that's when the NBA went into a collective bargaining agreement, the lockout. So I went overseas to Germany and, had one opportunity. One of my years, and I was probably year 3 or 4, something like that, when I was overseas, and came back and played with the Rockets in the summer league, and averaged 8 assists or something like that in the summer league. But then there's clearance issues from my team, and there's just all type of situations. So then I had to sit out a few games and stuff. And, but I wanted to play. I knew if I came back here, that'd be great. I'd potentially make more money. All those things would have been great. But I don't know how I would have been mentally just sitting there, being a cheerleader, essentially. So going over, overseas and being able to play meaningful minutes, and then, getting to see the world as well, it's kind of just an added bonus. So
I was gonna ask that. How hard was that to make that decision? Because ultimately, you growing up and playing at Purdue, you ultimately want to make it to the NBA. But at what point did it go, okay, and it sounds like you were to the point where it was if I've got to sit, I can't do that,
Mm-hmm.
So you took the opportunity to get what was inside you, the meaning of what you were doing, and that's getting minutes to make a difference, correct?
Yeah. It's just, it just came down to, what do you want?
Yeah.
I just wanted to play.
Yeah.
And, there was value, every year I played, I, was able to, it's like a stepping stone. You want to play well, you can make more money, go to a better place. You play well again, you can do it again. So just try to take those steps. And each year was a challenge. Mm-hmm. And then, if you do say sign a 1-year contract, you're just betting on yourself for the next year. I'm going to go out here, I'm going to prove it, and I'm going to prove it, that I can play at the next level. And then you want to do it again. So, I can say, I played EuroLeague, I played Euro Cup, I played Champions League, I played, all of them. I traveled all over Europe, played against Real Madrid, I played against Barcelona, all of those things. So, I played against Tel Aviv, where Trey is right now, where, Almer Meyer is coming from. Mm-hmm. So I played against all those teams and, played there and, all of those. I feel like my career was successful. It's just different than, what I had envisioned when I was a little kid.
So was it the 22 season that you retired officially?
Yeah.
Okay. So then
after that 22 season. Yeah.
What then have you gone to? You again, you have to fall back on that at the academics, because at some point they tell you they stop bouncing the ball for you. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily when you choose, but you're told it's done. What did you end up going to from there?
Yeah, so I basically retired because I tore my ACL mm-hmm. in my left leg. So I already tore my right one before that, so I tore the left one now. And at this point, I was kind of like a year by year situation of where we're at, as a family, in all those type of situations. And it was almost like God slammed the door and was like, man, it's over. This happened for a reason. Basketball's done. It's time to go back home. Let's get some normalcy. Get your daughter in school, and let's start life after basketball. So honestly, the transition out of basketball, being that it was, I guess out of my hands, but then ultimately I made that decision to so I had surgery, and I went into rehab with a completely different mindset than I did initially when I tore my ACL my first time. This is like, hey man, I want to go in here and be able to live the rest of my life pain-free. I don't want to go out of here and be able to play and do all of these things. Very different. So at this time we were pregnant with our second daughter. Second daughter. And
I understand completely the time running together on you.
So, from there, I said, man, you have 6 months until the birth. And at that point, I'm done rehab and I'm not coming back.
Right.
She was like, all right, like, this is our plan. This is what we're going to do. So, I did that to the best that I could with the kind of the mentality that I had going into it. But, I'm fine now. It is what it is. Had the baby. And then I stayed home for a year because I missed so much with our oldest daughter being, traveling. I think when Sophie was born, I left the day after or 2 days after I left to go on a road trip. And I was gone for 3 days.
Yeah.
So there's so much that I missed that I didn't want to miss this time. So I stayed home, was able to help my wife, after the C-section and things like that. And then just, be able to have these experiences, with Maisie as she's, some of these milestones that she's hitting that I didn't get to see before. So that was really cool. But then in the midst of this year, I'm, looking at, what do I want to do next? I thought I had a couple things that were going to work out that just fell through for whatever reason. One was at Purdue Hospital. They were talking about how things are going to go. The CEO gets fired. They hire somebody else. He puts a hiring freeze on all non-surgical jobs. So I was like, well, there goes that. And there was one at another hospital here too, doing some basketball, it kind of was a multifaceted thing. And then at the time, my neighbor owns a company that I work for now, Elios Hospice. And was like, hey man, what do you want to do? Like, what's important to you? And I was like, man, I want flexibility. I got young kids. I want this. And he's like, I got you. Like, let's have a conversation. So we talked. What's it look like? And basically, so I do. You can say now I'm the vice president of business development, but I started off as kind of like the hospice care coordinator. So I would coordinate, if we had any new referrals, coordinate some of that stuff, do customer service, just making sure that we were maintaining the standard of excellence that we've set previously, and that we're not, dropping the ball in any areas. Mm-hmm. And when I started, I shadowed him for a couple of weeks, and I was like, man, I'm good. Like, I got this. And he's like, okay. So then I went on my own, and, I just kind of mend relationships, start relationships, and, try to get people excited about Elios, about hospice, about, the care, try to differentiate Elios Hospice as a locally owned Fort Wayne, kind of hospice company, right. Against some of these big, corporations, and just show that why we are different and, why we are better, essentially at the end of the day.
Well, and I know exactly what you meant, but I'm going to preface it for some people. You don't want people excited about hospice, but excited about the stuff that you can provide. Like knowing what hospice is, that it's not necessarily the excited part about that, but excited that your company
Getting people
is
to
can
not
bring
be scared about the stigma of hospice.
There we go. Yeah.
And understanding about all of the benefits and all of the pros that come along with hospice, and its basic holistic care as a whole.
Oh, and I know from last September, my mom spent a few days in hospice before she passed, and it was the best place because we were able to be there with her 24/7, but we knew that she also had caretaking, there 24/7 as well in case there was a need for it. So, God bless you for taking that on and doing that role for such an important thing for the life of people. Not everybody can get into hospice because maybe they don't know it's happening, but my mom was able to be moved to there to where the hospice care was perfect because we got to spend those last days with her. So I get completely what you meant, but I wanted to preface it a little bit because somebody hearing that might be like, why in the world would I be excited about hospice? No, it's exciting to know that opportunity exists for
that exists, and then with help of third-party companies, like hospice companies, other things, we allow you as the caregiver to go back to being a husband or wife, to go back to being a son or a daughter, being able to go back to being whatever and not being that caregiver that you were. That you're able to spend those final however many days, right? Like for us, we've had patients on service for years. We've had patients on for hours. So there is a wide range, and just being able to let people get into and spend as much quality time and enjoy it without having the burden, not the burden, but to take on the responsibility of being the caregiver and the family member at the same time. Taking away the care and just letting them be that family member and just really soaking up every opportunity, every moment that they can is, from being that family member.
Beautifully said. Grant, you got anything else?
Well, I guess just something I lost connection there for a minute. Maybe I missed it. But when you were at Purdue, were you studying something like that's kind of related to that's helped you to get to this point in these last couple of years?
I was studying organizational leadership and supervision.
Okay.
So kind of, but
Roundabout
not really.
Way.
Just one of those things that kind of can kind of correlate in a lot of different areas. I think the thing that's helped me kind of differentiate myself is, first of all, being competitive. Like, it's a competitive market. It sounds kind of slimy to say it like that, but it is. There's a bunch of hospice companies, and we're all competing to try to get, referrals and, all of that. But it's just consistency. It's showing up. And that's one thing I'm going to keep showing up. You can tell me no, 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 but you're going to have to keep telling me no, because eventually
I'm going to keep coming back.
I'm going to keep coming. And that day that you need something, I'm going to be there. And it could change everything just that quickly. And, so for me, like when I go and talk to company or, businesses and, assisted livings, whatever, and it's, like, what is your relationship like now with whatever providers you have? If you're good with those providers and, everything is great, I'm good. We don't even need to have a conversation. But if things aren't going as well as you want them to, I think I can help you. I think we can help you. And let's talk about this. And, that's how I kind of go from there.
That's awesome. Well, Chris Kramer, former Boilermaker and kind of the I don't want to say the father of the baby boilers, but you were there before the baby boilers got there. So you were the captain. There we go. Captain
There
of the
we
baby
go.
boilers back in 06, 07 and forward. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experiences prior to at Purdue, your thoughts on Coach Painter, and then also what you've done since your life in West Lafayette. It sounds like you've had a very eventful life, and you're still kicking and going strong.
I'm trying, man. One day at a time.
Well, Chris Kramer, thanks so much, and Grant, another good Beyond the Rails. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and we'll see you next time.